So the next novel that we are going to read together is called Turtle in Paradise by Jennifer L. Holm. The copy you will get will have a cover looking like this. However, the new style of the cover looks like this. Now, this novel is a fictional novel, but what's very interesting about it is the setting makes it very realistic, and because it happened in the past, it is historical. So we have a very interesting text here that's going to be based on things that happen in history, but is also very realistic. I'll explain. First, let's look at where this story takes place. Curry Lane is specifically mentioned, and it's in Key West, Florida. Now, to put that into perspective, this is where we live here in Loveland, Ohio. This is Curry Lane off the coast of Florida. We learned about the equator and saw a picture of it going through Ecuador. So if you think about the equator, Key West, Florida is north in latitude, and in particular, take a look here. It's actually extremely close to the 25-degree latitude line that we learned about. So already, thinking about 25 degrees latitude in the expeditions, you're getting an idea of what the weather is like. It's very hot and it's very dry. So keep that in mind as we investigate this story. Now, to give you just a little more reference, if we were to travel in a straight line from Loveland, Ohio to Curry Lane in Key West, Florida, we would be traveling 1,028 miles. So that's quite a distance from where we live. Now let's get a little bit closer. Key West is actually an island that's off the coast of Florida. So this is the very most southern tip of Florida. And if you travel down along here and get to Key West, it is the southernmost part of the United States. Now, as we start to zoom in more, we notice that we're traveling through many of the islands until we get all the way down here into Key West. This is Key West Island then, and it's what it looks like today. So when our story takes place, there's not going to be any highway here going around. In fact, you're going to read about how, in order to get there, our main character had to take a ferry or a boat. And then, of course, once you get onto the island, there's all kinds of places there today that were not there now. So you won't recognize any of these things being mentioned. However, I believe there's probably a reference to Duval Street. But everything's about going to Curry Lane here. And so our story has a very real setting in where it is. However, setting in a story is more than just where it takes place. Setting is also very much about the when. And our story takes place June of 1935. Now, this is pretty important because there was a great deal happening in the United States at that time. And so as we read the story, we're going to learn more about a period of time in our country's history known as the Great Depression. So this becomes very important to this when of our story. And that's what makes it historical fiction. So it's based on real things that happen in history, but they didn't really happen. Now, of course, everything we do, we have a goal for. And one of our big learning goals for reading this is, of course, so we can identify characters in the story. More importantly, though, we're going to work on describing the main characters in this story, not so much using these physical outside qualities, because we don't get a lot of description of what the character looks like, but we are going to pay attention to those emotional traits or the inside qualities. The story is told from the point of view of the main character, Turtle. And so we get to know what she's thinking. Now, we're really going to be looking at her actions and how she feels as well. We will be able to easily define that the story is being told from Turtle's point of view because she refers to herself. What's going to be very interesting is that as we determine Turtle's point of view, we're going to have to pay a lot of attention to how our point of view is probably very different from Turtle's. A lot of that will be because not only is she living in a place and a time that we're not familiar with, but she's also had a lot of life experiences that make her feel the way she does. You might begin to realize that she's a very negative character in that how she feels about life in general is very, very negative. Just remember to start to separate how you would feel about something and try to work on understanding why Turtle's experiences have made her negative. Another big reason for reading this story is so that we can focus on vocabulary. Now, we learned about being a word wizard and using various strategies, particular context clues to determine meaning of words and phrases. However, this story, it's going to be key to look at the difference in non-literal language and using clues to determine the meaning of that non-literal language. In particular, we're going to be talking about what we call figurative language, which is very non-literal. In fact, figurative language are words or phrases that will exaggerate or alter the usual meaning of words. As we take a look at the first chapter called Rotten Kids, we're going to identify many examples of that non-literal or figurative language in this text. As we do that, we're getting to another big goal, where we're explaining how stories are written and arranged in chapters. We're going to use the terms chapters when we're writing or speaking about parts of this novel, and we'll be able to start to see how chapters are giving us information and are working together to create the story. In fact, if you haven't noticed yet, already the titles of the chapters are going to be very significant, and you're going to find in many ways the titles have a lot of meaning. Now, as part of the investigation that we're going to do into the figurative language is coming across a specific type of figurative language called an allusion. And an allusion is a reference to, it can be people, places, events. It's things that the author thinks you already know. Well, in the case of this text, because the setting is in 1935, there are going to be many references that you may not have heard before. And so another part of doing this is going to be to help us expand what we know and then use these references to get a better idea of what's going on with Turtle and her world. So, as you read, you're going to be aware of and hunt for allusions. And so I hope you're ready to travel south near the 25-degree latitude line and to travel back to 1935 to meet Turtle. As you read, you're going to find out that Turtle's name tends to be very special. And if you think about what you know about a turtle, the shell is pretty hard on the outside. But what can we say about the inside?